I knew something was wrong the moment my wife smiled at me that morning. It wasn't that it was fake. Karen had mastered the kind of smile that made strangers trust her and friends confess their secrets. But that morning, as she placed a cup of coffee on my desk and kissed my cheek, her smile lingered half a second too long, just enough for my instincts to twitch. I'd spent 12 years in counterintelligence, watching diplomats lie through their teeth, spotting enemies in crowded markets, disarming threats before they knew I was watching. I was trained to detect deception, and I was damn good at it, but I missed hers for 2 years, until now. That morning, I opened the gift she gave me for our 8th anniversary, a silver coin sealed in glass, engraved with the coordinates of the place we met. Cute, thoughtful, just the kind of romantic gesture she was known for. But the coin felt too heavy in my hand, not metaphorically, literally. By the time she left for her Pilates class, I'd already broken the glass and split the coin apart with a screwdriver. Inside, wedged deep in the hollowed center, was a micro SD card, encrypted, password protected, labeled with one word, BlackRock. I didn't hesitate. I plugged it into my secure laptop, bypassed the encryption in under 20 minutes using a bypass tool I wrote years ago, and opened a file directory that nearly stopped my heart. Inside were dossiers, surveillance logs, asset lists, my travel records from classified deployments, even transcripts of private meetings I'd had with high-level government contacts. None of this should have been accessible, not even to someone inside the agency. I was looking at evidence of a breach so deep it had to be internal, and every file traced back to me. My name was everywhere. My signature on confidential briefings, my voice on recorded debriefs, my login credentials used to download sensitive files. Someone had framed me, and they were using my wife to do it. I stared at the screen, breath shallow, as a thought I didn't want to consider surfaced like a dead body in still water. Was this ever a marriage, or was it a long con? I checked the creation dates. The data trail went back 26 months. That was right after my last deployment to Eastern Europe. That was when Karen started suggesting I slow down, when she pushed for more vacations, for cutting back my hours, when she started spending more time away with friends. I thought she wanted to reconnect, rebuild. Now I realized she was building a case. I shut the laptop and opened the safe behind my office wall, pulled out a secured comms phone I hadn't used in years, dialed a number I was never supposed to dial again. "Dustin here," the voice crackled. "Who the hell is—" "It's me," I said. "I need eyes on my wife. Real time. Full scope." A pause. "Jesus, Alex. You don't call for 5 years and now you want surveillance on Karen? What the hell's going on?" "I think she's trying to kill me." Silence. Then, "I'll be there in an hour." Dustin Morris used to run ops for a cyber intel unit, buried so deep it didn't technically exist. He owed me a favor, one I'd never collected, until now. By sunset, he was in my garage, pulling up her phone location on a secure laptop. "She's not at Pilates," he muttered. "She's not even in the city." He turned the screen to me. Karen's phone had pinged off a private airstrip 40 miles south. A black SUV had picked her up, driven her there directly after she left our house. "What's at that airstrip?" I asked. He didn't answer, just pulled up satellite footage. A private jet, registered to a shell company in the Cayman Islands, one I recognized from the files on the micro SD. "What do you want to do?" he asked quietly. I stared at the blinking dot on the screen, knowing I was watching the moment my life fell apart in real time. "I want to know who she's meeting." The next morning, I watched from a car parked half a block from a rooftop cafe in San Diego. Dustin's drone hovered quietly overhead, camera locked on the terrace. Karen sat across from a man I'd seen only once before. At a diplomatic gala in D.C. tall, silver hair, perfect suit. His name was Ethan Monroe, and I remembered the way he looked at Karen that night. Now he leaned across the table, smiling, and then he kissed her. I didn't look away, didn't move, didn't speak, because that wasn't what broke me. What broke me was what he slid across the table, a small black flash drive, and what Karen said as she took it. "Once this leaks, he'll be labeled a traitor. No one will protect him." Monroe smirked. "You're sure he doesn't suspect?" Karen smiled again, that same perfect smile. "Alex still believes I love him. I didn't flinch, but something inside me went very, very quiet. When I got home, I made a decision. I didn't scream. I didn't drink. I didn't text her 1,000 questions or confront her with the files. Instead, I walked to my safe, took out an envelope marked A1, and opened a box I hadn't touched since I left the agency. Inside was a key to a storage unit in Nevada, my old extraction kit, clean IDs, unregistered weapons, backup comms gear, crypto wallets, emergency passports. I slid it all into a duffel, and then I called Dustin. "Activate Protocol 5, I said. "You sure? I'm being set up. This goes beyond her." A beat. "Then it's time to vanish." But I wasn't running. Not yet. They tried to erase me, destroy my name, my life, my reputation. And they'd done it using the one person I would have died to protect. They thought I'd disappear quietly. They were wrong. I wasn't planning to run. I was going to burn it all down. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal. It was realizing how easily I'd ignored the signs. Karen had always been careful. No texts, no suspicious calls. Her schedule looked clean. Her stories lined up. But there were inconsistencies, little ones. She'd forget she told me something, slip up about where she'd been. I chalked it up to stress. I wanted to believe her. That part of me, the part that wanted to believe, is dead now. I left San Diego that night and disappeared into the desert. There's a place near Barstow we used for off-grid recon training. No Wi-Fi, no cameras, no neighbors. Just time. Time to study everything she'd done to me. Dustin dumped all the data onto a local drive. My travel patterns, email drafts I never wrote, flagged accounts that proved I'd leaked intel. The work was precise. Whoever set this up understood our systems better than most operatives ever would. That was the first red flag. Karen wasn't just doing this for revenge or money. This wasn't personal. It was professional, which meant she wasn't working alone. Dustin connected another thread 2 days later. The Cayman Shell company that owned Monroe's jet was linked to a defense contractor I'd flagged back in 2019, Red Light Systems. They were suspected of selling decommissioned surveillance tech to private buyers. Nothing stuck, but I'd buried the report deep. It should have been inaccessible, unless someone inside the agency had pulled it. "Who has clearance to your cold files?" Dustin asked me. "3 people, I said. "Myself, Karen through spousal permissions, and the deputy director of cyber intel." He raised an eyebrow. "That's Monroe's contact inside." My throat went dry. "You're telling me the agency is in on this?" "Not the agency," Dustin said, "but someone inside is. Someone powerful enough to scrub your tracks while keeping theirs clean." I leaned back and exhaled. This wasn't just about framing me. It was about clearing the field. Whoever they were, they needed me out of the picture. Discredited, destroyed, maybe even dead. So I gave them what they wanted. I disappeared. Step 1, I wiped my digital identity. Dustin built me a fresh one from scratch. New name, encrypted accounts, no past. Then I shut down all my phones, all known access points, all biometrics. I made sure no one could track me unless I let them. Step 2, I followed Karen. Not physically, not yet. Instead, I let Dustin trace her digital footprint. Private transactions, air travel, hotel check-ins. She wasn't hiding. She was celebrating. Flights to Monaco, dinner with Monroe in Madrid, a new townhouse purchased under an alias in Zurich. And then one name kept appearing next to hers. Victor Hadley. I hadn't heard that name in years. Hadley was ex-CIA, went dark in 2016 after a botched mission in Aleppo. He resurfaced 2 years later in Prague, working for a black market data broker. Last I heard, he'd vanished again. No trace. Until now. Hadley was Karen's new handler, which meant the people behind this were recruiting ghosts. And if they were using ghosts, they were preparing for something big. I needed leverage. Something to keep me alive long enough to get answers. So I went back to my storage unit in Nevada and pulled out the drive. I hadn't touched it in years. It was a backup of every internal case I'd flagged as unstable. Data leaks, compromised missions, bad intel. I was supposed to destroy it, but I didn't trust the people who told me that. Now I was glad I hadn't. Inside was a file named Snap Trigger, an operation I'd only heard whispers about. It involved AI surveillance algorithms, civilian data harvesting, and predictive behavior mapping. The program had been shut down due to ethical violations, but someone had reactivated it, and they were feeding it stolen intel. My intel. That was the key. They weren't just framing me, they were building a machine with my data at its core. Data I collected from real missions, real people, real enemies. If they used it for predictive tracking, thousands of civilians could become targets. That changed the game. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was a matter of national security. I uploaded a redacted copy of the Snaptrigger file to a whistleblower server run by a journalist I once saved from a cartel ambush in Juarez. She owed me her life and her silence. 24 hours later, the story broke. Leaked documents reveal rebirth of U.S. surveillance black program. It didn't mention my name, but the network behind Karen started to panic. Monroe changed his phone number. Hadley disappeared again. And Karen, she flew to Istanbul alone. She was running, or repositioning. Either way, I had momentum now. The final piece came from an unexpected source. A message popped up on my secure tablet. One word: regret. It was from a contact I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. A hacker named Reese who used to ghost for Langley before he went rogue. He sent me coordinates. Zurich, a warehouse outside the city. Everything you need, he wrote. Dustin and I were on a plane the next morning. When we got there, the warehouse looked abandoned. Dust, rust, locked gates. But inside, hard drives, hundreds of them. Footage, logs, financial trails. Not just mine, dozens of operatives, all being tracked, manipulated, rewritten. This wasn't an isolated hit. It was a systematic purge. They were framing agents, erasing them, repurposing their work for private gain, selling intel, collapsing cover ops, handing over assets to the highest bidder. Karen wasn't a wife who turned. She was a recruit. I stood in that cold warehouse with Dustin beside me, knowing we were holding a bomb, one that could blow open a scandal bigger than any I'd ever seen. I should have felt satisfied. Instead, I felt sick. I'd spent my life protecting this country, and now it was my own system, my own agency, that had turned into the enemy. But I wasn't about to let them win. Karen once said I wouldn't see it coming. She was right, but now they wouldn't either, because the hunter they created, he's coming for them next. Zurich was supposed to be quiet. It wasn't. The moment Dustin and I landed, I picked up movement. Two tails at the airport, one car shadowing us on the highway. They weren't local police. Too clean, too fast. We didn't lead them to the warehouse. We diverted, ditched the rental in a parking garage and exited through a maintenance stairwell. By the time we reached the safe zone, Reese was already waiting. He hadn't aged. Or maybe he had, just in ways normal people couldn't see. His eyes moved like he'd already calculated 10 outcomes. His smile said he'd only share one. "You picked a hell of a hornet's nest," he muttered. "I didn't pick it," I said. "They built it around me." He handed me a burner drive. "This is what they are after." It's a clean download of the Snaptrigger node logs. Every modification, every access point, every name, including the people Karen's working for. I hesitated. "So what's the play?" Reese looked at me like I'd asked the wrong question. "You still think this is about you?" I didn't answer, because for too long I had. That night, Dustin and I ran analysis. The logs confirmed what we feared. Snaptrigger had been hijacked by a private alliance, ex-intelligence, corporate security chiefs, international financiers. Not a government, not a nation, a market. They used compromised agents as data sources, pulled decades of classified ops and turned it into predictive, behavioral intelligence, which they sold to regimes, corporations, and criminal outfits. Karen's role was simple: access and extraction. She'd been assigned to me because of my fieldwork archive, my reputation, my clearance. I wasn't just a target, I was an investment. That was the moment I stopped seeing her as a person. She was an operative, like I used to be. Only now she was the one being handled. We leaked just enough to make noise. Two journalists received anonymized files. One EU watchdog launched a private inquiry. A think tank started a report. And then we waited for the hit. It came faster than expected. Reese's safe house was compromised first. We arrived 20 minutes after he was pulled out by force. No sign of struggle, but blood on the floor. His systems wiped. Dustin tapped into the CCTV net. 4 men in black tactical gear. No insignias. Private muscle. Same pattern we'd seen in Istanbul, when another source turned up drowned in his own bathtub. This wasn't cleanup. It was containment. Time to go on offense, Dustin said. I agreed. We needed leverage. Something too big to ignore. Something that wouldn't just expose them, but make it impossible to deny. The answer was in Prague. Karen's first mission. The cover was a diplomatic outreach program, but the files said otherwise. Karen had seduced and compromised a U.S. envoy, extracted his classified schedules, then disappeared before the fallout. The man, Mark Eldon, resigned, citing health reasons. No one looked deeper, but he was still alive. We found him in a care facility in Oslo. Early onset dementia. Mostly silent, except for one phrase, which the nurse said he repeated every day. She said it wasn't personal. We checked the visitor logs. Karen had visited him 3 weeks earlier, and surveillance showed she wasn't alone. Ethan Monroe. They were cleaning up witnesses. I stopped sleeping. I knew what was coming. One night, Dustin intercepted a communication between Hadley and Monroe. Keywords confirmed a location. Lisbon. A meet. Karen would be there. That was all I needed. Lisbon was sharp-edged with paranoia. I moved like I used to in the field. Disconnected, invisible. I watched the cafe from a roof across the street. Karen entered first. Monroe followed 5 minutes later. No guards. That meant they felt safe. Too safe. I watched their lips move through a long-lens camera. Dustin transcribed. They were arguing. Karen wanted out. She said the operation had gone too far, that I wouldn't stop, that she wanted immunity in exchange for silence. Monroe disagreed. He said I was already marked, that no deal would be honored, that her time was almost up. She slapped him. He stood, tossed euros on the table, and left. She sat there for a long time, shaking. I could have ended it right then. One shot, clean, untraceable. But I didn't, because I finally saw what I needed to. She wasn't the one giving orders. She was just another asset, disposable. That changed everything. I followed Monroe instead. We tracked him to a luxury flat near the marina, second-floor unit, 2 exits, minimal security. We went in at 2:12 a.m., silent. Dustin jammed the signals. I reached Monroe's study while he was asleep, and for the first time in months, I saw fear on the face of someone who deserved it. He tried to talk. I didn't let him. Just pressed a phone to his face and hit play. Karen's voice from the cafe. I want out. He'll never stop coming. You promised me immunity. His face changed. I leaned in. You're going to give it to her, I said. He scoffed. Why do you care what happens to her? I didn't answer at first, because I didn't know. Then I said, because people like you break others just to stay in the shadows, but not this time. By morning, Monroe had wired a digital contract to a secure EU intermediary, offering Karen full protection in exchange for her silence. It was a lie. I knew that, but I sent the contract to her anyway. Then I added a note. They're coming for you next. Decide who you want to be when they do. She didn't reply, but she activated a secure number we'd used 5 years ago. A deadline. It lit up that night. She was still alive, and maybe waking up. I wasn't after revenge anymore. I was after the system that created her, and I had just found the thread to pull. Next stop, Vienna, the place where Snaptrigger had been rebuilt, where it would all fall apart. You can't dismantle a machine unless you find its power source. In our case, that was Vienna. Officially, it was the European headquarters for a private cybersecurity firm called Grey Halo Systems, a name that didn't appear on any federal contractor lists, but Dustin found one indirect link, a shared server address with Red Light Systems, the group behind Snaptrigger. Unofficially, Grey Halo was a ghost shell. No public board, no press presence, no digital footprint. Just a fortified server farm 2 floors beneath a luxury tech incubator. We arrived in Vienna under aliases. I hadn't slept in 2 days. Dustin was on caffeine, adrenaline, and something he didn't want to talk about. We didn't speak much. Words felt like wasted time. The plan was simple. Find the server room, clone everything, get out. The plan didn't survive contact with reality. Gray Halo's building had biometric access, facial scan, palm ID, and voice print. We couldn't spoof all three, not on site, so we cheated. 3 weeks earlier, Dustin planted a malware string in their HR database. When the system flagged a software conflict during a scheduled update, they requested outside help, and Dustin just happened to have a freelance IT identity with the right credentials. The night before our infiltration, he was officially approved as on-site repair tech. The next morning, we walked in through the front door. The elevator to the lower levels required dual authentication. While Dustin played technician on the upper floors, I waited in a service stairwell. At 10:24 a.m., a junior systems manager entered the elevator alone. I joined him. He didn't make a sound. Not after the second step I took behind him. Not after the injection. His access badge and biometric glove came off without resistance. He'd wake up in 20 minutes, hopefully in time to explain why his ID was last scanned at level 2. Inside the server vault, the temperature dropped. Dustin joined me 5 minutes later. "What are we looking for?" he asked. "Backbone logs. Everything that connects Snap Trigger to real-world operations." He nodded. "Give me 12 minutes. He worked. I watched the feed. At minute 9, alarms flared. Silent. Internal. But it meant one thing. They knew someone was inside. I locked the doors. "Can you pull it all?" I asked. "I can pull 60% and bounce it to 3 servers in Iceland. What about the rest? If I stay another 6 minutes, I can get 90%. I didn't like those odds, but we'd come too far to walk away with half the puzzle. "Do it," I said. I drew my weapon, waited by the only entrance. Time passed like lead. The first 2 agents through the door weren't security guards. They were hired tacticals, trained, fast, tight movement patterns. I dropped both before they fully entered the room. Dustin didn't flinch. He just said, "We're at 84%. Another alarm, this time audible. Emergency lockdown initiated. We had 60 seconds before the building sealed. "Pull the drives," I said. He yanked the core SSDs from the nodes, slid them into a hardened case, and tossed it to me. "Go. What about you?" "I'll handle the exit. You've got what matters." He was wrong. He mattered. But I knew what he meant. We didn't both need to go down with the building. I left through the sub-service crawlway. Dustin triggered a fire suppression override to mask thermal signatures. Outside, I blended into the foot traffic. Clean clothes, new face, standard misdirection. At a secure location across the city, I decrypted the drives. What I found wasn't just a map of operations. It was a ledger. Dozens of American and European officials receiving silent payments. Crypto transfers, asset contracts, surveillance footage, psychological profiles, behavioral models. It was the command spine of SnapTrigger. And at the center, not Monroe, not Hadley, Karen. She'd been promoted. She wasn't just an asset anymore. She was running operations, recruitment, asset leverage, termination protocols. That was the first moment I realized I'd underestimated her. All this time, I thought she was a tool. She'd become an architect. I couldn't breathe. Not from rage. There was nothing left to burn, just clarity. I had 2 options: expose everything now and vanish forever, or push deeper. Find out who let this happen, who gave Karen the platform, the trust, the budget, who enabled the rise of a system that could turn loyalty into a liability. So I sent the drive to 3 journalists, 1 Swiss, 1 Dutch, 1 exiled American reporter working from a boat in international waters. I included one message: if I don't contact you in 72 hours, publish everything. Then I sent her a message, not to her agency line, not to her burner, to the number we used when we eloped, back when it was just us. She responded within 5 minutes. "Where?" I gave her a location: neutral ground, public, a bridge over the Danube, midnight. I arrived first. The water below was black, the sky overcast. Street lamps flickered in the wind. She came alone. No backup, no weapon, just Karen. We stood 10 feet apart. "Why now?" she asked. You're the only one left who knows how this ends. She studied me. I didn't want it to be you, but they chose you. You didn't say no. I couldn't, at first, and then I didn't want to. I waited. She stepped closer. You always saw the threat, just not in me. I see it now. She nodded. So what now? I reached into my pocket, handed her a USB stick. Their names, the real ones, not the handlers, the architects. You're not even on top. She hesitated. I don't need revenge, I said, but I need to know if you're still capable of a choice. She took it, didn't say anything, just walked away. The next morning, 4 arrests were made in Berlin, 2 in London, 1 in Warsaw. Monroe went dark. Hadley fled Hong Kong. Karen? She vanished. Her file was deleted from every database. I still don't know what choice she made, but Snaptrigger collapsed, and that was enough. For now, I should have disappeared. After Vienna, after the arrests, after Karen vanished, I should have gone dark, burned everything, taken the win and left the board. But the problem with cutting the head off a snake is assuming it only has one. What I exposed brought down operators, not architects. Monroe, Hadley, they were executioners, replaceable. The real power never carries a gun. They just pull strings from glass towers and invisible accounts. And they were still out there, which meant I wasn't done. The journalists published their pieces just as I'd asked. Snaptrigger became headline news for 72 hours. Leaks, speculation, scandal. Then the noise stopped. A politician in Brussels called it a fabrication. An intelligence committee in the US issued a vague denial. One outlet quietly pulled their article after editorial concerns. 2 reporters dropped the story mid-investigation. Pressure was being applied, and it was working, which meant the system wasn't just corrupt, it was self-healing. Someone was sanitizing the mess. I needed to find out who. Dustin and I regrouped in the Azores, neutral ground, off-grid. He'd been digging through metadata from the Vienna server drives, analyzing administrative access logs, firewall behavior, response protocols. At first, it all looked automated, layers of AI decision trees built to mimic human oversight. But then he found a signature, a digital fingerprint buried in the access protocol. Old school, human-coded, manually embedded. It appeared on every core adjustment to Snaptrigger, every override, every shift in targeting priority, every purge. Codename, Orson. Whoever Orson was, they weren't just running the program. They were designing its future. And according to the logs, they operated out of Geneva. Geneva was a city that understood secrets. Diplomats, lobbyists, global funds, all hiding behind layers of neutrality. We started with financials. Dustin traced a network of shell companies connected to Orson. The money moved clean, through law firms, humanitarian funds, even climate initiatives. The kind of laundering only generational wealth could afford. But it wasn't until he hacked into a dormant Swiss account that we got a break. An inbound wire, 40 million euros. Sender, U.S. Strategic Initiative Council. It wasn't a real agency, just a front. But the board members listed on the original filing, that was real. One name jumped out. Martin Kavanaugh, former Undersecretary of Defense, now head of a private strategic advisory group consulting for half the G20. I remembered him. He gave a speech at the Intelligence Roundtable 5 years ago about evolving methods of preemptive surveillance. I didn't think much of it then. Now I realized he'd been telling us his plan, and we'd applauded him for it. We moved fast, used encrypted comms to contact a retired operative who once served as Kavanaugh's advance liaison. Promised her nothing but the truth. She agreed to meet. One condition, no surveillance, no weapons. I agreed. We met on a cargo ship docked off the French coast. She handed me a black folder. Thin, no labels. Inside were logistics records, not files from Kavanaugh's current work. His private flights, ghost meetings, unlogged diplomatic visits, and 2 photographs. One was Karen, the other was me. Time-stamped, overlaid with predictive threat tags. We weren't targets of opportunity, we were trial runs. Kavanaugh didn't just support Snaptrigger. He initiated it, funded the early prototypes, recruited its handlers, And now he was expanding it globally under different names in different languages through different tech firms. Snaptrigger was dead, but its code had been cloned. It would rise again, new interface, same core. And Orson, just one of many architects. This wasn't a program anymore. It was a doctrine. We returned to Lisbon. Dustin tapped into one of Kavanaugh's proxy firms. We found travel records indicating a private summit was scheduled in Marrakesh, 1 week away. Attendees, senior defense consultants, tech CEOs, former Intel directors. Karen's name wasn't on the list, but I knew she'd be there. She'd climbed too high to be left out now. I sent one message to her secure line. "You're walking into a furnace. Don't pretend it's a boardroom." She didn't reply, but her location blinked green 40 minutes later. Marrakesh, confirmed. That night, Dustin asked what I planned to do once we got there. I said, "Find Kavanaugh, end the doctrine." He didn't ask how. He knew. It wasn't about violence. It was about detonation, of information, of networks, of control. Kavanaugh wasn't scared of bullets. He was scared of exposure. So I'd give it to him. We arrived in Marrakesh 4 days before the summit. Enough time to build our angles. Enough time to figure out how this ends. But something changed. 2 nights before the summit, I got a call. Blocked number. No voice, just a breath. Then, "You were right, Karen." Then, "They're planning to erase the table. Not just flip it. Everyone, including me." I didn't speak. She continued. "I want to give you something, but I won't survive the fallout. Not unless you help me vanish." I thought about it. She was right. The only way to collapse the machine was from the inside, and she was still in it. For now. "Okay," I said. "We meet once. After that, I disappear you. But if you lie to me again—" "I won't," she said. And for the first time in a long time, I believed her. Marrakech was a mask, a city built to distract. You could disappear in the crowd, in the colors, in the noise. And that's exactly why they chose it. The summit wasn't listed on any agenda. No press, no invites, no digital trail. But we traced the logistics: private jet manifests, satellite pings, encrypted comms routed through dummy servers. The people arriving weren't tourists, they were architects. The ones who built the doctrine that ruined lives and erased names. Snaptrigger was just the prototype. Now they were launching Project Horizon. Same core, broader reach, real-time civilian tracking, behavioral prediction at a global level, branded as proactive stability architecture. I'd read the briefing. The language was sterile. The implications weren't. They wanted to predict threat before it formed, which meant targeting thought before action, which meant killing freedom in the name of safety. They were done watching. Now they wanted control. Karen and I met the night before the summit, not in some dark alley or abandoned building. We met in a public garden, in daylight. Tourists nearby, children playing. She sat first. I waited a full minute before approaching. "You came," she said. "You're the one who ran," I replied. "I stayed longer than I should have. Longer than I wanted to. You had chances." I didn't know who I was anymore. I believed that, because I didn't know who she was either. Then she handed me a drive. "This is the trigger." I opened it. No password, no trap. Inside, full schematic of Horizon's architecture. Uplink codes, admin override protocols, real-time access maps. "This is live," and I said. "It goes online tomorrow after the vote. One of the servers is already active. Geneva. The other is here, under the summit." She looked tired, not weak, just done pretending. "Once they activate it," she said, "no one will be able to shut it down. It self-replicates. And what do you want? To burn it down. For real this time." Dustin built a plan in 6 hours. We wouldn't attack the summit physically. That would fail. Instead, we'd detonate its existence. We'd leak the live access node to 5 journalists, 3 already primed with Snaptrigger. But this time, we'd add something they couldn't ignore. Real-time video of the summit's participants voting to activate global behavioral surveillance on civilian populations. The kill switch wasn't violence. It was proof. We needed to get inside. Karen handled that. She still had her clearance, her access. Still a ghost on the inside. She got me a temporary ID linked to a contractor who'd never existed in the real world. A fabricated profile with active credentials. We entered separately, reunited on the top floor of the conference hotel, where the server access uplink was housed under biometric guard. Karen waved us through. The guards didn't blink. We set the uplink tap. Dustin connected remotely from a secure hub 2 kilometers away. The stream went live. 3 independent nodes recording. Encrypted relays to 5 journalists. Karen stood beside me, arms crossed, as the room filled with people in suits and perfect posture, carrying nothing but certainty. Martin Kavanaugh entered last. He didn't look like a villain. He looked like the man who gives villains permission. He began the vote. 12 members. 8 required to authorize activation. Karen whispered, "They think they've won." I nodded. "Let's show them they haven't." One by one, they voted yes. Kavanaugh called it a historic moment in modern security. The room applauded. The final vote passed. And just like that, Horizon was active. 30 seconds later, Dustin pushed the stream. Every screen on the hotel network glitched, then began to mirror the conference. In 5 locations across the world, journalists received live uplinks. 15 minutes later, it hit global news. Headlines exploded. Private surveillance vote leaked. Global civil tracking system exposed. Government contractors approve AI targeting network. Off the record. Project Horizon. Inside the shadow vote that tried to predict your life. Panic. Denials. Internal chaos. And then Kavanaugh saw it. The stream. His eyes scanned the room. He knew. Then his gaze landed on me. We didn't wait. Karen and I slipped out as security scrambled. Dustin looped the building's surveillance to cover our exit pass. It bought us 5 minutes. It was enough. Outside, we didn't speak. We just walked. Past crowds, past guards, into the heat and noise of Marrakesh, where no one cared who you were if you kept moving. At a safe distance, Karen finally asked, "Is it over?" "No," I said. "It started." That night, Kavanaugh went dark. His comms shut down. His digital trail froze. By morning, he was in a secure facility in Jordan, protected by a private paramilitary company. But the walls were closing. 2 of the board members were arrested in Berlin, 1 in Argentina. Anonymous dumped a file on darknet forums listing everyone involved in Snaptrigger and Horizon. Karen's name was on it. So was mine. I offered her a way out. New identity. No signal. No trace. She refused. "I want to finish it," she said. "You started this war, but I lived in their house." She had names, protocols, backup copies. She knew where the bodies were buried, because she helped dig them. Now she wanted to unearth everyone. So we went underground, not as fugitives, as hunters. One by one, the old architects vanished. Not because we killed them, because we made them visible, exposed, named, tracked. The same way they did to everyone else. Only now they were the target profiles. They built a machine to predict behavior, but they never predicted us.